What makes a person a hero? Is it the courage to fight with weapons or the courage to fight with words, ideas, and sacrifice? In Philippine history, one name continues to stand as a symbol of intelligence, patriotism, and moral courage. Dr. Jose Rizal, born on June 19, 1861, in Calamba, Laguna, Rizal became a doctor, writer, scholar, reformist, and martyr whose works helped awaken Filipino nationalism during the Spanish colonial period. He did not lead an army, but his writings helped inspire a revolution of thought among Filipinos. This digital biography represents the life of Dr. Jose Rizal, his family, education, writings, activism, exile, final years, and lasting influence on the Filipino nation. Jose Rizal was born into a well-known family in Calamba, Laguna. He was the seventh child of Francisco Mercado Rizal and Teodora Alonso y Quintos. His family background gave him access to education, but it also exposed him to early discipline, faith, culture, and the social realities of colonial life. His mother played a major role in his early learning. Before entering formal school, Rizal was partly educated at home. From a young age, he showed unusual intelligence, curiosity, and talent in reading, writing, and the arts. He later studied at Ateneo Municipal de Manila, where he earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in 1877. After Ateneo, he studied medicine at the University of Santo Tomas, partly because he wanted to help treat his mother's failing eyesight. However, his experience in the Philippines also exposed him to discrimination and unequal treatment under Spanish colonial rule. In 1882, Rizal left the Philippines for Spain. He studied at the Universidad Central de Madrid, where he earned a licentiate in medicine. His education did not stop there. He also trained in ophthalmology in Europe and worked with leading eye specialists. Rizal became a man of many fields: medicine, literature, science, art, language, and history. But more than his achievements, Rizal's education shaped his mission. He saw that the problem of the Filipino was not only poverty, it was also ignorance, injustice, and lack of freedom. Through learning, he discovered a way to serve his country. Rizal believed that words could expose injustice. This belief became powerful through his two major novels, Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo. In 1887, Noli Me Tangere was published in Berlin. The novel criticized abuses in colonial society, especially the corruption and oppression connected to friars and colonial officials. It became controversial and was later banned by church authorities in the Philippines. Through characters like Crisostomo Ibarra, Maria Clara, Padre Damaso, and Sisa, Rizal showed the pain of a society controlled by fear, hypocrisy, and injustice. He did not simply write a story, he held up a mirror to the colonial system. In 1891, Rizal published El Filibusterismo in Ghent, Belgium. This novel was darker and more intense. It continued the story from Noli Me Tangere and explored frustration, revenge, and the consequences of oppression. It was dedicated to the memory of the three Filipino priests, Gomez, Burgos, and Zamora, whose execution deeply influenced Filipino nationalism. Rizal also became part of the propaganda movement, a reform movement led by Filipino intellectuals in Europe. From 1889 to 1891, he contributed writings to La Solidaridad, a newspaper that called for reforms such as representation, equality before the law, and respect for Filipino rights. His activism was not based on violence. Rizal believed in education, civic reform, and peaceful advocacy. In 1892, after returning to the Philippines, he founded La Liga Filipina, an organization that aimed to unite Filipinos and promote mutual aid, education, and reform. However, Spanish authorities saw him as a threat. Shortly after founding of La Liga Filipina, Rizal was arrested and deported to Dapitan. Rizal's literary works became so important that Republic Act No. 1425 also known as the Rizal Law, later required schools, colleges, and universities in the Philippines to include courses on his life, works, and writings, especially Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo. The law recognized these works as sources of patriotism for Filipino students. In 1892, Rizal was exiled to Dapitan in Zamboanga del Norte. For many people, exile could have meant silence and defeat, but for Rizal, Dapitan became another place of service. During his 4 years in exile, Rizal lived as a doctor, teacher, scientist, farmer, engineer, and community worker. He established a school and a hospital, and he helped improve the lives of local residents. Dapitan showed another side of Rizal. He was not only a writer who criticized society, he was also a practical reformer who built solutions. According to the Department of Science and Technology, Rizal worked on public health, livelihood, and public works during his exile. He developed a gravity-based water system that brought cleaner water to the community through pipelines. He also introduced practical innovations such as street lamps using coconut oil and contributed to land surveying and public health efforts in Dapitan. This part of his life shows that Rizal's patriotism was not only expressed in books, it was also seen in his service to ordinary people. And in 1896, Rizal received a permission to travel to Cuba as a volunteer doctor. However, during that same year, the Philippine Revolution began. Although Rizal rejected violent methods, Spanish authorities accused him of the involvement in the rebellion. He was arrested, brought back to Manila, imprisoned in Fort Santiago, and tried by military court. Before his death, Rizal wrote in his final poem, later known as Mi Ultimo Adios. On December 30th, 1896, he was executed by firing squad at Bagumbayan, now known as Luneta or Rizal Park. He was only 35 years old. His death did not silence his message. Instead, it made his life and writings even more powerful. Rizal's legacy is not limited to the past. His life continues to influence how Filipinos understand nationalism, education, and civic responsibility. He showed that love for country is not only expressed through emotion, it also requires discipline, learning, courage, and service. Through his novels, essays, and activism, Rizal helped Filipinos to see the injustices of colonial rule and imagine themselves as people capable of dignity and freedom. After his death, the struggle for independence continued. In 1898, the First Philippine Republic was proclaimed, and Rizal was widely honored as a national hero. His life has since been remembered through monuments, institutions, holidays, and educational programs. Today, Rizal remains relevant because the questions he raised are still important. What does it mean to be educated? How should citizens respond to injustice? How can knowledge be used to serve others? How can young Filipinos contribute to the nation? Rizal's answers was clear through his life. Use your abilities not only for yourselves, but for the good of others. He was a physician who wanted to heal, a writer who wanted to awaken, a scholar who wanted to understand, and a Filipino who loved his country deeply.